So I think the US, in relative terms, is less affected by trade issues than other countries in the world, because in relative terms, it imports and exports less than others. It's a very big economy, and a lot of activity is domestically focused. So, for example, if you compare it to Korea, which is at the other extreme, a given trade shock has a smaller impact on the overall economy. That said, though, there's one channel that does affect the US and every other country, which is that the more trade uncertainty you have, the more people think about investing, right? Do I want to do it now? Do I want to wait until there is a truce? Or do I want to wait longer because maybe after the truce there's something else I need to think about? So it does affect the US less than other countries because it is an economy that's more based on domestic transactions. So China, in the last 10 years, in last 20 and 30, has made a lot of progress, right? If you take a historical perspective, it's one of the very few large countries that has managed to increase income per capita a lot. And that shows you that fundamentally there are many good things going on in the Chinese economy. I think trade is an issue to deal with, but if we are focusing on the next 10 years, I would say that, just as the US, China is a very big economy. So I think a lot of growth will come from developing domestic markets. Exports now in China relative to, for example, 2005 are less important. So it's an economy that is evolving more toward growing out of domestic consumption, out of households getting richer and wanting more services, wanting to travel more. So it's less of a pure manufacturing economy that then exports these goods. So I think that if we are looking for parts of the Chinese economy and sectors that can drive growth and where things could happen, I think it would mostly be in terms of the consumer and services technology, less on the pure manufacturing side. That was at the core of China's initial rise many years ago, but now it's losing some importance, in part because the country gets richer, salaries are higher, which affords people more goods, more services, but makes you a slightly less attractive destination for very basic manufacturing. So I think that's the picture for China in the medium term, setting aside what's happening now or last week or next week with trade. So I think one big difference between China and other markets is that many emerging markets have developed by borrowing a lot from abroad. So in other words, they've had current account deficits. Their development has relied on having a lot of foreign money flowing in because they didn't have enough domestic savings to finance all the investment they had to do. China is completely different in this respect. It's always had a very high savings rate, so it depends a lot less on foreign investment to develop. And that's a very important difference, and it makes the country a bit more resilient to global shocks. It is still very connected to the global economy, so it cannot just brush aside a recession in the US or the crisis that happened in Europe in 2012, but it makes it quite different, and it increases the importance of domestic factors relative to the international economy. So I would like, of course, I want to hear how they see things on the ground in China with their business partners, because in all these trade things there's always the view from people doing business on one side and the people doing business on the other side, in addition to the policymakers discussing a possible agreement. So I think that's the fascinating thing for anyone coming here today, to talk to a lot of people who are in Chinese businesses, who are feeling the effects of trade tensions, and that gives me a better picture of what's happening. And same when you go to Europe, right? You get another perspective on how trade tensions are affecting the global economy. So I would say, when it comes to your career, think always very well where you want to go in 5-10 years. Also take into account what's happening today, whether we have trade tensions, whether we don't. But the most important thing is know where you want to go, have a plan, and think about the big trends in the world and how you can handle them, right? I think that the most important thing for any professional, actually, young or not today, is more how to deal with technological change, what it means for our jobs, for everyone's jobs, for mine, for yours, for everyone else. What is the job market going to look like in 10 years with more technology and more automation? I think this will turn out to be a lot more important in a few years than the status of US-China relations, which I think are an easier thing to resolve than the effects of automation on our jobs, which could be big, we don't know, but it's one we will all have to think about a lot.